always true.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
These pictures offended many people around the world. Refugees trying to enter Hungary met by riot police and tear gas. Other governments in Europe have taken a very different approach. At least initially, Germany and Austria opened their borders. However, they too are now implementing some border controls. But beyond this, there's a picture evolving of a profound difference here between the former Eastern European countries and the rest of the EU. A sense that non-European refugees are not welcome here. In fact, the Prime Minister of Hungary has said Europe's Christian identity is under threat. The Prime Minister of Hungary hasn't spoken to international media at length, but today the country's foreign minister sits down to defend his Prime Minister and his government for the way it deals with refugees. Here on Talk to Al Jazeera. Peter Szijjártó, the Foreign Minister of Hungary, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. As you know, Europe has been facing an unprecedented refugee crisis. Your country's found itself on the front line and there's been a great deal of criticism of your country. Do you think this is unfair?
It's the most serious challenge, actually, that the European Union has ever faced since her foundation. So I think it's natural and obvious that there are debates. What I find unfair is that international media shows very one-sided reports about the situation. But, politicians should not take too much time with complaining about media. So what I want to say here is that the reason why we have not found a proper answer on this issue and the reason why we have to speak about whether we are treated fairly or unfairly is that there's no consensus in Europe about two issues. First, there's no consensus about the nature of this challenge, and the second, that we have no consensus about the size, the volume, the future of this challenge. Regarding the nature, Hungary is located on the external border of European Union. That's what we call the Schengen border. And we experience day by day that this mass migration is being composed of asylum seekers, definitely, a lot of economic migrants, and we detected some foreign fighters as well, or at least our friends during the route, the Western Balkan migratory route.
Where were there foreign fighters? Because I've seen no confirmed reports of that.
We have talked to our Macedonian friends a lot because they are the first entry point after Greece as a non-EU member state, and the foreign minister there has informed us on more sessions that they have detected some foreign fighters among those ones who entered illegally or irregularly the territory of Macedonia. And regarding the size and volume of this whole challenge, according to our understanding, this is a mass migration with unlimited source of supply of people. Because if you put into consideration the unstable region around Europe, like Iraq, where there are 8 million people living on humanitarian aid, Syria, where there are more than 12 million people living on humanitarian aid, in the sub-Saharan African region, there are 12.5 million IDPs, and we have not spoken about Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan. It's very easy to see that there are tens of millions of people living around Europe who are in a situation that can make them make a decision to hit the road shortly.
You accept that many of these people are refugees fleeing desperate situations, repressive regimes and war?
Of course. The dilemma in Europe is that if someone arrives to Greece, because this is the first entry point of European Union, and then moves from Greece to Macedonia, from Macedonia to Serbia, from Serbia to Hungary, and then from Hungary to Austria, and from Austria to Germany, then on this move, what is his or her motivation? Because leaving Greece for Macedonia, the motivation is surely not a life danger, because no one's life is in danger in Greece. Or when these people move from Hungary to Austria, what is the motivation? For surely not escaping from Hungary, because in Hungary no one is in danger. No one has a life hazard.
To get to somewhere that's welcoming, and some have said your policy has not been welcoming. So let's examine your policy in detail. Let's first look at your original policy, which was the idea, I think, of closed camps. That's what you were pursuing. Explain that policy and why you gave up that policy.
there's a piece of regulation which is called Dublin regulation. Dublin regulation says that if an irregular migrant enters a territory of a European Union member state and he or she submits a request for asylum, then the procedure has to be carried out in that given member state, and the person who has submitted the request for asylum has to stay in that country until the asylum procedure has been carried out. But in the meantime, when we had that kind of method in place, what you have just described, that we have kept the migrants in closed camps until the procedure for asylum has been carried out, then European Commission wanted to launch an infringement procedure against Hungary.
Because they said that your camps were like prisons.
No. They said that there's a European court decision saying that you cannot keep these people in closed camps. But with this, we admitted, of course, and we have stopped this method and changed. But after this call of European Commission, we cannot fulfill with the Dublin regulation I have just described, because we cannot force these people to stay in the country during the procedure of asylum. That's the case.
Let me just tell you what UNHCR said in 2012 about your closed camps. Typically, an asylum seeker will be detained for 4 to 5 months and spend much of the day locked in their rooms. When taken to court for hearings or to a doctor outside detention facilities, asylum seekers are handcuffed and escorted on leashes. These are asylum seekers being treated, when you had this policy, like criminals, when in fact these are people escaping criminal actions in their own countries.
I do not totally agree what has been said, not by you, but was quoted by you, actually.
That's UNHCR.
Yeah, right. So
the UN's refugee agent.
We have been always treating migrants properly according to international conventions. And we always supply them food, water, medical assistance, education if needed, shelter. But it is obvious that these migrants do not want to come to Hungary. They just want to go through, and in many occasions they just don't respect our laws, and they don't respect European laws, and they don't cooperate with the local authorities. Sometimes they are aggressive and they attack police. So sometimes we are faced with behavior which is not according to 21st century expectations in Europe. So that's why I think that when we speak about the obligations and responsibilities of countries, then we have to speak about a code of conduct as well, which should be followed by the migrants as well.
Your new policy seems to be building fences. You have one fence that's 175 kilometres long on the Serbia-Hungarian border. You're building another one on the Hungary-Croatian border, 350 kilometres. Yet many European leaders say that Fortress Europe isn't the right policy. The UN Secretary-General, Ban Ki-moon, in the last week has said we should not be building fences. What do you say to those figures?
First, that there's a regulation in Europe which is called Schengen. Schengen regulation allows countries which are members of European Union and members of Schengen zone not to have borders in between. So, for example, Hungary is member of Schengen zone, Austria is member of Schengen zone.
26 countries, named after a
Germany,
little village in Luxembourg.
That's right. So, when you start driving from Budapest to Vienna to Munich, actually you cross 2 borders, but you don't even realize because there's no border control. But in order to be able to maintain this very open cooperation, let's put it this way, there's an obligation on the countries which are on the external border of this Schengen area to protect the external borders. Because if you don't protect your external borders, you put the whole Schengen area into danger, because if someone gets in Schengen zone, then there's no more border control. So the Schengen Code, which regulates this whole issue, obliges the member state, like Hungary on the external border, to protect the external border, and it says that we have to make sure that the Schengen border, the external Schengen border, is only crossed through the designated border crossing stations and only during opening hours. And it is our responsibility to ensure that. So we have a 175 kilometer long border with Serbia, as you have just rightly pointed out. On that border we had from 3,000 to 10,000 migrants coming in the country on a daily basis. So we had no other We had no other instrument at disposal to protect that border and to comply with the EU regulation, by the way, than building a physical obstacle. Now, we have not closed the border, we closed the green border. So what we have done, we built an obstacle to avoid irregular or illegal crossing of the border. Legally, you can cross the border very easily. There are 7 border crossing points where you can go there. You give your passport and you are being let through. If you are traveling or coming as a migrant, then you have to go there. You have to report in as an asylum seeker, and you have to submit your request for asylum. What we wanted to avoid is that, just people coming uncontrolled, unregulated. This is not the way.
But you knew that they were coming. You knew there was a whole flow of people coming to a fence that you were building and a border that you were closing. Was it not inevitable then that you used riot police? And those riot police used what people have called unacceptable methods. I mean, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Prince Zaid, told me he believed you breached international law when you used tear gas and water cannon at refugees, people who are fleeing wars, and you start attacking them.
That's what I say. It's a very unfair treatment of ours.
Well, explain it. Why did you do it?
Yeah, and that's why I say that there's an international campaign against us in international media, because what you refer to is the following: tear gas.
Well, it's not the international media, it's the High Commissioner for Human Rights. He's a very important figure in the UN.
But he was not fair. And he made his statement on one-sided information, which is a huge mistake from a person who fulfills such a position. And I think if you are in such a position, you have to be responsible. And this was a very irresponsible and very unfair statement from him, regardless who he is. So what happened? There's a possibility to come to Hungary for everyone, regulated according to law and according to regulation. There was a very aggressive group of migrants, not innocent refugees, not children, not women, very aggressive group of men migrants. They came to the border. They said, if we are not let in, then we will attack the police. That's what they said. And what they was doing was the following. They brought stones, pieces of concrete, and they were throwing from the territory of Serbia to Hungary, where the Hungarian police people were. They were throwing them 1.5 to 2 hours long, 1.5 to 2 hours long, stones and pieces of concrete, injuring, wounding 14 Hungarian policemen. No one speaks about that. I was wondering whether the UNHCR would say that it is okay. This is people have to behave in the 21st century in Europe. You can just attack freely policemen because you are not led in a country. And after more than 1 hour of undisturbed attack on the Hungarian police from the territory of Serbia by aggressive migrants with stones and pieces of concrete, the police used water cannon and they used tear gas in order to stop this attack. None of this would have
happened if you hadn't built the fence and closed the border, would it?
But can I ask you something? Do you think it's, now we, of course I don't want to change roles, but do you think that it is the way that people should behave, that if they just want to go from point A to point B, they just cross borders as they want, they just walk through fields as they just want?
But you have to remember where these people are from. These ministers...
They were coming from Serbia.
Well, yeah, but they were coming originally from places like Syria and Afghanistan. These are determined people because they're absolutely desperate people. These are people who've made it across a perilous sea crossing to get to your country, which they thought was a place of refuge, and instead they're met by riot police.
But we have to stick to the facts. We treated migrants always according to international regulations. We never used any kind of aggression. We never used any kind of violence against them. We always treated them properly. So please be fair and please stick to the facts and don't blame and don't allege Hungary with things that we have not done.
Well,
no matter what who has said that.
A lot of these pictures were shown, as you know, live on international television.
Kind of pictures?
And reporters, and we had reporters at the scene, said that some of those that were there asking for asylum gave in their passports, and within minutes they were rejected en masse. They weren't properly considered, some of these applications. Do you think there were some mistakes made by your authorities?
There are legal methods which should be followed by the immigration officials. And it's a dilemma whether, if you come from a safe country, and Serbia is a safe country, this is a candidate country to the European Union, it cannot be unsafe. If you come from a safe country, can you be considered as a refugee or not? Whether your motivation to come from Serbia to Hungary is that your life is in danger, I wouldn't think that. There's another type of motivation. What is the motivation? To have a better life in economic terms, which is totally legitimate.
Or the motivation is your life was in danger in Syria and you're trying to get somewhere welcoming. And the first place welcoming is Austria or Germany and you're just trying to get there. These people don't even want to stay in your country. They want to go elsewhere.
If they don't want to stay in Hungary, you think it's normal that they can just cross the border as they want? They can just occupy railway station. They can just occupy motorways. They can go through fields. You think it's normal? Because I don't think so. There are international regulations how countries have to act and how migrants have to act. But if I just come back to the fence, you know, there was a whole lot of debate within Europe, of course, about that. We received a whole bunch of criticism, some fair, some correct, some not fair and not correct. And I asked all of my colleagues whom I met, foreign ministers, who raised this issue that you have this fence on the border. I said, look, do we have to comply with the Schengen regulation or we can give up? And they said, no, you have to comply. And I said, all right, could you please tell me how we can comply with the Schengen regulation without having a physical obstacle? I don't know. That was the answer. And then European Council made a decision just recently saying that yes, everyone has to comply with the EU regulations with no exemption. So it means that if we don't build a fence and we let these 8,000 to 10,000 migrants coming into Hungary without a problem, you know, then we would break European law and then we would be criticized because of that.
So sometimes, isn't it time to forget about the rules and regulations and show compassion and human decency?
Well, if you say that there are certain times or occasions when you have to forget about rules and regulations, I think that would be very dangerous, because who will tell you that now you can get rid of regulations, what kind of regulations you get rid of? So I think that would be very dangerous. But if you put this in another way, saying that is it possible or is it necessary to amend or change these kind of regulations of European Union, I would say yes, it's definitely necessary, because these kind of regulations were made in times when were totally different than the current ones. But we have these regulations currently.
1956, the Hungarian Uprising. Your country tried to free itself from Soviet domination, and that was put down by the Soviet army, as you know, but with Soviet tanks. And then there was a refugee crisis, the first one UNHCR ever had to deal with. 200,000 people in total left your country, Hungarians, most of them taken by Austria. Isn't it the same?
You know, I have to reject the parallel in this respect, because it's totally different. Totally different. They have nothing to do with each other. You know, these refugees were not aggressive. They were cooperating with the authorities in Austria. They were respecting the law of the countries where they went. They never attacked police. They always cooperated. What we experience now is that aggression is part of this mass migration. Since some, let's say, misunderstood statements from Western European politicians, these migrants actually basically refuse any kind of cooperation with Hungarian authorities. They don't want to register, they don't want to take a fingerprint, they don't want to take a photograph. Sometimes they attack police. They refuse going to the refugee camps to get supply of food, water, medical assistance. They invade railway stations, invade motorways. Such kind of things were not made by the Hungarian refugee in 1956. So I really do have to reject all kinds of parallels that would like to be put between the current mass migration and the Hungarian refugees in 1956.
Let me ask you about some of the comments by your boss, Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. Yes, he's a populist and sometimes controversial figure, but do you think he's gone too far on some of the things he's said about this? Because I've heard people say, again, the High Commissioner of Human Rights said he was offended by some of the comments and said they were xenophobic. Some say they're possibly racist. Let me read
Which
you.
I have to refuse.
Well, let me read. I think we have the right to decide we do not want a large number of Muslim people in our country, deciding on the basis of someone's religion whether they can come in or not. That seems to me, I think, against the refugee convention that all countries, including Hungary, have signed up to. Let me read you another quote from him. Those arriving have been raised in another religion and represent a radically different culture. Most of them are not Christians. And a comment from just the last few days. Young men, he says, are coming in from the Arab world who look like warriors. Do you stand by all those comments? I mean, he's not helping your case, is he?
You know, I'm proud to work with him. That's number one. Number two, we have to stick to facts. And these kind of words like xenophobic and racist and all this kind of, I just have to refuse. Refuse and refuse, because they are not true. What the Prime Minister said in the whole context, and what I represent as well, that there's a danger in Europe that an anti-Muslim policy, or anti-Muslim policies would be spread, which we totally reject, because we are totally aware that Muslim faith, which we honor and respect a lot, Muslim faith and culture, which we honor and respect, have nothing to do with the root causes of this mass migration. We are a Christian country, and the Christian approach does not tolerate anti-Muslim policies. We have a great number of Muslim people being part of our society. They are successful, they are respected, they are good friends of us. What Prime Minister said is the following, that all nations, all countries do have the right to make a decision whether they would like to share their lives with a significant other community or not. France made such kind of a decision. You know, there's a significant Muslim community living in France. This is what we respect. We don't comment on that. That's the decision of the French people and France. But we think that as we respect that decision, we expect to respect that we have the right as well to make decisions how we would like to live our life in our own country, and whether we want to share our life with significant other communities or not. But once again, I would like to say that the Christian approach does not tolerate anti-Muslim policies. And you know, I'm a foreign minister. We have a very strong strategy over foreign policy called Eastern Opening. And one of the major objectives and principles of this strategy is that we would like to build a very, very strong cooperation with the Arab world. And we are developing in a very proper way, I think.
One of the ideas that you proposed is global quotas for refugees. Does anyone else support that idea that you've spoken to among the international community?
Sure, we did. And actually it was quite, I wouldn't use the word funny, but quite nice, let's put it this way, that after the Hungarian Prime Minister, the next one to deliver his speech was the Maltese Prime Minister, using the same words of word quota. And there were quite a lot of very positive feedbacks on behalf of the participants of the meetings this week here in New York on the UN Assembly, that we understand this mass migration as a global challenge, a global issue. And Europe must not bear the whole burden of this challenge. And what we think that we have to share the burden globally. Because
well, hang on, isn't this a bit cheeky coming from Hungary when there was an idea of sharing the burden among Europe, you objected to that. You voted against it. Yes, it's gone through by majority. Yeah. And you only, under that quota, were supposed to be taking 800 people.
Yeah, but that was not because of the number. That was because it did not make sense. Because we were, we were debating about how we relocate 120,000 migrants in Europe. And until we debated about that, there were much more than 120,000 coming in. So what we said was that we need sequencing, list of priority. On the top of the list should be the ability to get back the control over our borders. Because until we are able to get back the control over the influx, it doesn't make sense to speak about quotas, because, as I told you, we spoke about 120,000, and during we have spoken about that, there were much more than 120,000 coming in. So the problem is much bigger than how we relocate 120,000. Why not we speak about 250,000, 300,000, or 50,000? No one could answer this very easy question. So we didn't oppose this because of the exact numbers. We opposed this because it didn't make sense at that time. But by the way, coming back to world quotas, I think that there were a series of bad international political decisions that led to destabilization of the region around Europe. Europe was not only stakeholder of these decisions, and we really do have to honor Turkey, we really do have to honor Jordan, Lebanon, who've been bearing enormous burden to maintain refugee camps and all this stuff. So I think that we have to share the burden. Europe, the Arab world, Middle East, US, Russia, China has to take her part. In this respect. That's why we asked as the Secretary General for preparing such kind of a solution, because if we agree that this is a global challenge, and I think we more or less agree, then we need a global solution with global participation.
Looking back at the last couple of months, do you think Hungary has made any mistakes?
Well, actually, it's a very tricky question, because if you answer yes, we have done, then you can put it on the cover stories that Foreign Minister of Hungary said we have made mistakes. If I say no, then it's an answer which is not going into reality. Of course, everyone commits mistakes, but at least we have done something, because we really do believe in actions. And not in words in this respect. And we cannot fight this challenge or cannot overcome this challenge, let's put it this way, by words. We have to do actions. And Hungary has done actions. And actually there are more and more people in Europe, even in publicity, saying that Hungary complies with EU regulations and should not be criticized because of complying with EU regulations. So it's a challenging situation which we have to overcome, but it doesn't make sense, to blame each other and put a very unfair criticism on each other, because it doesn't help.
You fully explained your country's actions. Our audience will judge that. But do you accept that the recent events in Hungary have been a PR disaster for the country?
I served as a spokesman for 6 years, 4 years in opposition and 2 years as a spokesman of the Prime Minister. And I do know that what kind of headwind you have to fight when you do something which is outside of mainstream. So our communication team has made tremendous efforts in order to explain what we have been doing. That's what I'm currently doing as well. As Foreign Minister, I have a responsibility to explain what my country has been doing and why. What we ask for is fair treatment. And if we get the fair treatment, and if we are judged by facts, as like now the viewers of Al Jazeera, then I think that's a correct situation. What is not correct is that sometimes, or rather more than less, unfortunately, there are very one-sided and unfair reports about us, which is, of course, unfavorable for us.
Peter Szijjártó, Foreign Minister of Hungary, thank you very much for talking to Al Jazeera.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.